Well, welcome, HeatherAsh. So glad to have you on my Voices of Women show today. And so I'll introduce everybody to HeatherAsh Amara. She apprenticed for over a decade with the Toltec teacher, Don Miguel Ruiz, who's the author of the Four Agreements. I think we're all familiar with that. HeatherAsh was raised in Southeast Asia and has traveled the world from childhood and is continually inspired by the diversity and beauty of human expression and experience. She brings this open-hearted, inclusive worldview to her writings and her teachings. She's the author of 9 books, including the best-selling Warrior Goddess Training, and her latest book is Wild, Willing, and Wise. She skillfully and unconditionally guides people to shift from self-judgment to discernment, victimhood to authentic vulnerability. And her website is warriorgoddess.com. So welcome, HeatherAsh.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'm delighted to be here with you and with Women of Wisdom. Yay!
Yeah. So first, tell us how you got interested in this work of training women, the Warrior Goddess training.
Yes, many years ago, I was studying at college and I took a women's studies course, and it drastically changed my life. And from that women's studies course, I started asking this question of where were women empowered? Where were women connected? And I started studying European shamanic tradition and going way back to explore a time when we lived in circles, when we were midwives and healers, and where there was a much deeper connection to the earth. So that started my journey doing women's circles. And I like to say I was drafted by the goddess because I was so shy and no desire to teach, but it was needed. And I loved sharing what I was learning. So that started when I was 19 years old, 40 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, it's great to start so young. A lot of us don't get to this till we're older.
Yeah, I was very blessed.
And you were at Women of Wisdom many years ago, giving a workshop. We had many wonderful people there. So, and I know you're doing something currently about women as leaders. Tell us a little bit about that, or just, what you think women need to really claim their leadership.
I love empowering women and helping women to find their voice and their courage and their vulnerability. And what I work with is this idea that many of us were trained to be conditional in our leadership. And conditional means I'll love you if, I'll respect you if, and we do that to ourselves. We judge ourselves, we feel victimized, we compare and criticize ourselves. And letting go of being conditional and stepping into being unconditional in our leadership is not about who you're leading. It's about, from your center, learning to lead yourself from a place of respect and compassion and gentleness and fierce courage, and then let that emanate out. Because the truth is, we're leading all the time. How are we leading? Are we leading in old patriarchal models of power over? Or are we rewiring ourselves so that we can come back into the relationship with the circle and with truly empowering each other?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the circle, because that's one thing I see is important for women, that we're drawn to being in a circle, and it's based on like every voice counts. Every voice is important. And when you're in a circle, you can see everybody versus the hierarchical model when you're in school and you're in rows, and if you like to hide, you're in the back row, and a lot of women do like to hide because, a little fear of being maybe looking stupid, or you don't know the answers, or you're going to be embarrassed, or you're going to be laughed at. And I had a setting that, we all need to take our place at the table, of our own place at the table, take the seat that we deserve to be there, and to step forward and be a part of the process.
Yeah, I so agree. And so many of us have vacated our inner seat. We've given our own sovereignty, our own sense of self-worth and presence over to who we think we should be, or who we think others want us to be. And we actually abandon ourselves. And so I love that idea of take the seat in the center of our being, and then we can take the seat at whatever tables we feel drawn to So we bring our voice and our presence and our perspective, which is so valuable.
Yeah, and it's about being authentic and not being, I think we're afraid to be vulnerable too, to show our flaws and actually, and I think it's important perhaps for leaders to show their flaws and their mistakes so that we all know it's not somebody on a pedestal who's perfect, that everybody can be there. And it's really an inward journey of honoring and respecting yourself of who you are and what you believe in, and not and letting go of those fears of that won't be respected, or you won't be liked for voicing your opinion on things, and the whole or shame comes into it too, that feeling of feeling shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why for those of us that are stepping into leadership, whether again, that's internal leadership or leading communities or families or groups, that we need peers that are on the same path, and that the teaching is our spiritual path. That's what I think about my practice as somebody who is a leader and a guide, that it doesn't mean I'm done or that I'm not evolving or that I don't make mistakes. It's like I make plenty of mistakes and I'm learning with everybody else as
Yeah.
well. And there's a humility that we get to bring and a willingness to be uncomfortable. I mean, sometimes people are like, God, you're so lucky you get to travel and teach and people love you. And I'm like, yep. And I experience an extreme amount of discomfort as well, that's what we need, is our capacity to stay steady with conflict and our own growth edges and people projecting onto us, and that we can be that steady. Think about it as a ship where we've got a deep, deep rudder and we know where we're going. And that is what we really need, is not, and this is the only way to go, but I'm clear where I'm going. And some people want to come on this journey and some people don't. And that's great.
Yeah, and so your voice, people relate to your voice, and other people relate to somebody else's voice. There's room for all of us.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, and you mentioned, let's see, I was picking up on a word you said, and now I've forgotten it, but that's okay. But let's talk about, because you're doing retreats now in Mexico, and you're interested in the Day of the Dead. So why is that the Day of the Dead important? And it's not something in our Western culture. This is something coming out of Mexico and probably other cultures, but we have a hard time here in the US and other Western countries of accepting death and honoring death. And there's something very magical when you see some ceremonies for the Day of the Dead. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been going down to Mexico with Miguel since 1994. I think was the first time I went down there with him. And there was a certain point where he passed the teachings and invited us to really continue bringing people down to Teotihuacan, which is a pyramid complex outside of Mexico City, and it's considered the heart of Toltec wisdom. And the Toltecs were a group of people in South and Central Mexico that were really interested in perception. There's some phenomenal tools and wisdom. So Teotihuacan is a place of initiation. The pyramids are set up to help us to shed what's no longer beneficial to us and to really meet what we call the angel of death. And I was so struck with that when I first met the angel of death and was introduced to this concept that she's benevolent. She's not trying to take everything away. She actually already owns everything, and she's gifted us with our life. This is the cosmology of the Toltec, and that really struck me as a young woman. And so, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I started going down for Day of the Dead, and I've always been interested in ancestral work and the cross-quarter days, which is Day of the Dead is right around Halloween, which is also called Samhain, which is a cross-quarter day where it's considered the veils are thin between the worlds. And in Mexico, the Day of the Dead was a ceremony to Mictlan, to the god and the goddess of the underworld, and that the belief is that the ancestors don't leave us as long as we're feeding and acknowledging them. They're guides and allies. And that at Day of the Dead, November 1st is actually All Saints Day. And that's the day to honor the children that have died in stillbirth or miscarriage or died young. And then actual Day of the Dead is November 2nd, and that's to honor the adults, the ones that have crossed over. And there's a big celebration. Often people go to the cemeteries and bring offerings, and they'll have meals on the actual grave of their dead. And the dead are remembered. And they're not separate. So something I love about Mexican culture is that there's a real understanding that the living and the dead are in proximity and in relationship with each other. And so I love taking groups down there and inviting people to connect with their ancestors, both their biological ancestors, but also their beloved dead, people that have died in their lives, whether it was somebody that they knew or someone who was a mentor through, a movies or through books. And also it keeps us up to date. So like this year, we've lost, in my little community, we've lost 4 people in a month, like big people in the community. And so I know it's a time for me to go down there to grieve and to really honor the ways that these people have deeply touched my life, and to say thank you to them and to feed them. And you literally build an altar and put what their favorite foods were, what their favorite drinks were on the altar in pictures, and have a conversation. So I'm really delighted that this is the first time I've done something online while I've been down in Mexico doing Day of the Dead with a group. So I love that we're doing it through Women of Wisdom and through the connection here.
Yeah, that's great. So it makes me think of like, what can we do? Because it's so non-existent in our culture. What do you suggest to people? And I'm sure you'll be leading some of this in the workshop and giving people ideas, or maybe, but what do you suggest for people to ways they can honor the dead, and how they should prepare for it, approach it? Any words of wisdom about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Simple ways is to find your favorite photos of your beloved dead and print them out, or objects. So I like some of my great grandparents, I don't have photos of them, but I know that part of my family's from the Outer Hebrides, and I have like a postcard that I got when I was there. So that I'll put on the altar. So you can put objects, and so starting with gathering objects, gathering photographs, candles, if that feels good. And in Mexico, there's always flowers, lots of flowers and lots of fruit. So that's a fun thing. And you want to create a space in your home. And it can be, if you have kids or pets, or you don't want it to be really out in the world, I literally will use my lingerie drawer and pull it out and create a little altar so I can shut it. Or you can use your bureau or a place in your kitchen, someplace that is public or someplace that's private. Either way is fine. But create an altar, put flowers, put photographs, put mementos. And then what are the offerings? The offering may be incense. It may be, I have a friend, my ex-partner, her mom smoked Marlboros. And so I put her photo and I put a Marlboro cigarette in front of her photo. So that's what she liked. Doesn't mean I have to like it. So there's this honoring of what did our people like, putting that on the altar. And so that's a great way to then be in communication. And you can build that altar starting now or the Day of the Dead, November 2nd. So whatever feels good. But it's really sweet to leave it up for a while and to sit and have conversations and say hello and acknowledge our dead through that ceremonial space.
It could be very healing for people who are, especially like you've lost 4 people recently, healing for the grief, and because grief can reside on you and affect you physically. It's important to release it, let it go, have the tears, express the feelings, so that you can, we still move forward in our life. Like you said, they're still with us, but we can move forward. Sometimes if some people get really caught in that grief and it holds them back and into a place that's not healthy, perhaps.
Absolutely. And you're so right, Chris, that in the West, we don't have ceremony and ways to process grief. We're really told, push it down, keep going, don't feel it. And so to have a space where you're giving yourself permission to grieve and really understanding grief is love. We grieve because we've loved something. And in order to keep that channel of love open in our being, we want to grieve. When we don't grieve, we start armoring, and we start armoring our hearts, and we don't let love in because we don't want to be hurt. But what I've found is what actually hurts more is shutting ourselves off and not acknowledging how people have touched us and the tenderness of being human. There's something so beautiful about giving ourselves permission to grieve and feel the loss and the tenderness. And that when we are fully letting that emotion move, we feel better on the other side. We feel more open and more joyful and lighter after we've grieved.
Yeah. And, I tell people sometimes I'm in some meetups and it's like, sometimes things come up for people and the tears come and the tears are healing. People feel embarrassed to be crying. And yet tears is healing. It's releasing those emotions that can get stuck inside you. So tears are really good. And I imagine them making this altar, you can put all the people that you want to honor. And it's really about honoring. And you say, and even you may be saying prayers for them and talking to them. So do you find that you even like ask them questions and advice for what's coming up in your life, and you want some advice from the wise people that have been there for you before and are no longer here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I often at Day of the Dead, I'm sharing my gratitude and my appreciation and my love. And then the rest of the year, I talk to the dead all the time. And a lot of cultures, traditional tribal cultures, like wouldn't make a decision without consulting the ancestors. That would be crazy to not consult your ancestors, the people that came before you. And I think I found that to be really healing, that if I'm stuck, I'll ask my dad. And like my relationship with my dad, for example, was kind of challenging when he was in body. Like we butted heads a lot, but him as an ancestor and an ally, like there's such a deep camaraderie that I have with my dad now. That's so beautiful. I never
Yeah.
met
So
my
there's that
grandmother on my
healing of that
maternal
relationship.
side, and I have yeah, yeah, exactly. Whether you knew them or not, like I feel like I have such a beautiful relationship with my grandma now,
Mhm.
and it's just the willingness, what we want. You don't need to know how to do it. It's just the willingness to reach out and ask for help or ask a question or invite their presence that opens the
Mhm.
channels.
And what may be hard is thinking, well, I'm not believing you're going to get an answer, and you may not get in words. I think it's important to maybe pay attention, like just put the prayers out there, put the questions out there, and the universe usually responds in very interesting ways. You might see a billboard, might hear something on the radio, and you go, oh, that's the answer to my question. It comes later. Sometimes we expect, we live in this Western culture where everything's got to be now. So I didn't get an answer, so this didn't work. Well, a week down the road, a month down the road, who knows when.
Exactly, when the window will open. Yeah, there's a woman in one of my neighbors who mama died last year. It was very difficult for all of us, of course. And she was really hard for her because her mom never visited her. Like she felt like she never got to talk
Mhm.
to her mom. And she's like, why isn't my mom visiting me? And then a year later, she's in a ceremony up on the land in New Mexico. And suddenly mama's like, hi, like, and just downloading information to her.
Mhm.
And so we just don't know. They do talk or communicate in different ways, and sometimes it takes a while. We have to let go of our Western, like you said, like, why aren't they talking to me? And realize they probably are. And we keep refining our capacity to listen.
Right. And I'd say we probably don't listen as well as we should.
Yeah.
There's this thing of listen more, talk less.
Listen more, talk less, beyond off of social media more, make space, get
Mhm.
bored. Like that's the time when things come in, is actually when we start getting bored,
Oh,
or
interesting.
we're
And
just
we
hanging out.
avoid being bored. Being bored is horrible. It's like
Exactly. Exactly. But how can there be any space for anything to come in if we're constantly filling?
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Well,
And
tell us
that's
a little
something that
about
I
what
love
people.
about doing the ceremony, is it
Uh-huh.
creates space.
Oh,
Like, and
yeah.
that's what we'll be doing in the workshop is I'll actually be in Mexico, which is so exciting because I can bring everybody into the energy there. and the altars that we've already created, because we create big community altars and then individual altars. So I'll be near one of our community altars, and then we will do ceremony together. I'll talk more about Day of the Dead and some of the history and the background around it. And then we'll do ceremony, we'll do visualizations, we'll travel to meet the dead and to get guidance and to learn how to listen. It'll be joyful and deep, and we'll create space for whatever emotions want to move, and everybody's welcome. You know, like I always feel really deeply blessed when somebody shows up who's just lost somebody very close, like just lost a child or lost their partner. And there's a lot of tenderness and space for wherever you are in the grieving process. If you're absolutely raw and can't talk, you are welcome to come. If you lost somebody 20 years ago and you don't know how to bridge or how to make that connection, you are welcome. Everybody's welcome. And there'll be space for all of our experiences.
Oh, that's great. I so appreciate you being willing to be with us for Day of the Dead for Women of Wisdom. And I want to tell people that you can find it on our website, www.womenofwisdom.org, and just look on the tab for programs. It actually will be /services, womenofwisdom.org/services. But if you just go to the website, you'll see programs. There's 2 other events listed. It's the 3rd one there. And so there's a link there to make payment. And for anybody who's listening for this, there's a regular price of $45, but you can register for $25 and really give yourself this gift of time with HeatherAsh and with your beloved, the beloved dead in your life.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for hosting and creating this space with me to share something that's so transformative, I think, in people's lives around expanding our community to include the dead in a really real way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. And we look forward to seeing everybody on November 2nd. It's 1 o'clock Pacific time. So again, just go to the womenofwisdom.org website and you can find out everything about it. Hey, thanks again, HeatherAsh, for being here today.
You're so welcome, Chris. Thank you. And I hope to see everybody very soon.